Modern life doesn't just make comfort accessible, it makes it inescapable. We are surrounded by systems designed to remove struggle, to automate challenge out of existence. Doors open with sensors, meals arrive without cooking, emotions are dulled with entertainment. And while all this convenience may seem like progress, it carries a silent cost, erosion, because ease without effort doesn't bring peace. It breeds fragility. Minds unused to strain falter under pressure. They spiral at the first sign of uncertainty. They break, not from the size of the storm, but from the lack of preparation. The Stoic walks another path. He doesn't reject ease, but he doesn't lean on it. He welcomes discomfort in controlled doses, not to make life unnecessarily hard, but to make himself strong enough to carry it when it is. He trains not for a spotlight moment, but for the unseen battles ahead. When life asks for strength, he doesn't scramble for motivation. He draws on a quiet reserve, built from repetition. Small acts of discipline performed without applause, without reward. There are no medals for enduring the difficult when no one's watching. But over time, something shifts. You become less reactive, less entangled, more solid. Where others seek escape, you look for resolve. Not because you were born tougher, but because you've trained your response. So don't wait for the world to challenge you. Add challenge to your world on purpose with clarity. Build resistance where you can. Lean into the edges, not to fracture, but to forge. Because the mind that struggles today is the one that will carry you tomorrow. There's a kind of strength that doesn't come from addition, but from subtraction. In a culture obsessed with more convenience, more speed, more stimulation, the Stoic chooses less. Not as punishment, but as precision. He says no where others say yes, and in doing so, carves out space of clarity. Take fasting, not just from food, but from impulse. In the modern world, discomfort is met with a reflex, a snack, a screen, a scroll. We soothe before we even understand what we feel. But fasting, whether from eating, talking, scrolling, or spending, is a way to interrupt that pattern. It's a pause that asks, what am I really hungry for? When you fast, you let urges rise without bowing to them. You learn to sit in the heat of wanting and choose something higher. It's not just physical restraint. It's psychological sovereignty. Seneca practiced this routinely, dressing plainly, eating sparsely, not to glorify deprivation, but to remember, I am not owned by indulgence. When everything is stripped away, what remains? Can I still think clearly? Can I still act with purpose? Then there is sweat, not the polished, curated sweat of fitness culture, but real, raw effort, the kind that humbles, the kind that leaves you breathless. The Stoic doesn't train for aesthetics. He trains for endurance. He chases that quiet point where the body begs for relief and the mind chooses to continue. There's a sacredness to that repetition. In sweat, the ego softens. Focus sharpens. You learn what it feels like to continue through fatigue, not for the world, but for yourself. That's not just training the body. That's tempering the soul, because life will get heavy, and you'll be grateful you practiced carrying weight. And finally, simplicity, the most invisible, yet perhaps most profound of the three. Simplicity isn't about living without. It's about living without distraction. The Stoic simplifies not to be trendy, but to be awake. He clears the clutter, not just in the home, but in the mind, in the habits, in the inner dialogues no one else hears. He asks, how many of my choices are inherited, automated, or unexamined? How many things do I hold on to simply because I haven't questioned them? Simplicity is rebellion against chaos. It says, I will not mistake noise for meaning. I will not fill space just to avoid silence. Marcus Aurelius wrote, if it is not right, do not do it. If it is not true, do not say it. That is simplicity at its essence. Less action, more intention. And from that discipline comes a rare kind of lucidity. When you quiet the noise, you hear yourself again. You see what matters. You feel the edges between what you performed and what you've truly lived. Fasting, sweating, simplifying, they aren't goals. They're lenses. They bring your life into sharper focus. Difficulties are not to be dodged, but leaned into. Because when you willingly step into what's hard now, you don't just brace the storm. You become someone who's already walked through it. You meet chaos like an old opponent, steady, calm, unshaken. So ask yourself, what hard thing am I avoiding? Better yet, what challenge can I choose today, not out of punishment, but to grow? The answers won't be wrapped in comfort. They'll sting, they'll stretch, but they'll forge something real. And that strength, the kind that endures, it isn't flashy. It doesn't shout. But when the world trembles, you'll be the one who stands still. Because discomfort, done right, builds the strongest muscle you have, the mind. You don't get physically strong by dodging weight. You grow by carrying it, small increments, consistently with focus. The mind works no differently. If you protect it from every difficulty, every tension, every ounce of mental strain, it slowly unravels, quietly, steadily, until one day, the smallest problem feels impossible. That's why the Stoic doesn't avoid discomfort. He seeks it with intent, not because he enjoys suffering, but because he knows resistance is a builder, just as muscles need tension. The mind needs friction. It needs adversity. It needs silence. It needs things that test it and make it fight for clarity. The Stoic doesn't ask for a pain-free life. He asks for a life where pain is a teacher, not a tyrant. He trains by facing discomfort on purpose, so that when life delivers it by force, he is not caught off guard. And discomfort has many forms. It's not always physical. Sometimes it's emotional. Sometimes psychological. It's choosing stillness when every part of you craves noise. It's holding back words when your pride wants to erupt. It's rising early when your bed whispers one more hour. It's doing the hard thing even when no one's watching. It's looking in the mirror and telling yourself the truth. These aren't dramatic gestures, but they are real and they are reps. Seneca wrote, "Difficulty strengthens the mind as labor strengthens the body." That isn't poetic fluff. It's a method. It means every act of endurance, every small win against weakness, carves something deeper into your character. Over time, what once felt unbearable becomes training. Pain becomes data. Discomfort becomes feedback. You stop seeing struggle as a problem and start seeing it as preparation. But modern life, it's engineered to remove all of this. We are surrounded by convenience, by digital sedation, by a culture obsessed with minimizing effort. And while comfort feels good in the moment, it corrodes your core, because peace that's never earned creates people who panic under pressure. It builds lives that break when the Wi-Fi cuts out, when the schedule changes, when anything goes wrong. The Stoic knows this. That's why he welcomes strain, not recklessly, but in measured doses. He doesn't go looking for chaos. He just refuses to be so coddled that he forgets how to carry weight, because life will hand him that weight one way or another. And when it does, he won't need hype or help. He'll rely on the quiet strength built from silent discipline, the hard morning runs, the conversations he didn't avoid, the delayed impulses, the deep breath instead of quick reaction. And no, there are no medals for doing this, no audience. But over time, something shifts. You become less reactive, less dependent, more anchored. When others flinch, you hold steady. Not because you're fearless, but because you've trained for friction. If you want that kind of mind, don't wait for chaos. Create it, one challenge at a time, one stretch outside the easy. Not to punish yourself, but to prepare. Because the mind you build in the dark is the one that holds you in the storm. And then there's subtraction, fast, sweat, simplify. Not everything strong is built by adding. Sometimes strength is what remains when everything non-essential is removed. In a world that constantly tells you to want more, do more, own more, the Stoic opts out. He fasts, not because food is wrong, but because self-control is more valuable than indulgence. He sweats, not to sculpt his body for praise, but to discipline his will. He simplifies, not out of lack, but to find clarity in the absence of excess. Start with fasting. And not just from meals, but from impulse itself. In today's world, the moment we feel unease, we grab something, sugar, scrolling, noise. But fasting interrupts that loop. It lets the urge rise and teaches you not to bow to it. And in that decision, you reclaim authorship over yourself. Fasting is not about deprivation. It's about dominance over reaction. It reminds you can feel hunger, frustration, anxiety, and not obey it. Seneca practices regularly. Rough food, plain clothes, basic living. Not to suffer, but to strip things away and ask, if I lose the luxuries, am I still strong? Still whole? Still me? And then there's sweat. Not the curated gym kind. The kind that burns. The kind you earn. The Stoic doesn't train for Instagram. He trains to test himself. He wants the feeling of the final rep. The fatigue that reminds him, I did something hard and I didn't quit. It's a ritual of endurance. A physical echo of internal resilience. Because stillness doesn't always build peace. Sometimes peace is forged in fatigue, earned through motion, effort, fire. There is something spiritual in sweat, in choosing exertion when rest is easy, in embracing the discipline of discomfort. That's not just training. That's transformation. This isn't about reviving old traditions or mimicking ancient rituals. It's about embracing tools that are vital in today's overstimulated world. In an era where every screen, sound, and scroll pushes you toward more comfort, more distraction, more indulgence, the Stoic mindset offers a radical shift. It teaches you to want less, not because scarcity is noble, but because restraint is powerful. This path isn't paved with glamorous suffering. It's forged through deliberate friction. It asks not for drama, but for discipline. It urges you to withdraw from the constant pull of excess, not as a punishment, but as preparation. The strength you build through voluntary discomfort isn't loud. It's hidden in the discipline of stepping away from ease, of choosing to go without, of selecting effort over indulgence. It asks honest questions. When did you last deny yourself something on purpose? When did you last chase discipline instead of convenience? When did you last subtract instead of accumulate? If your answer echoes with silence, then it's time to begin the work. And that work isn't complicated. It's as basic as sweat, stillness, and simplicity. You do it not to impress anyone, not to earn applause, but to return to yourself beneath the noise, the comfort, and the illusion. Because life doesn't wait for your readiness. Hardship does not knock first. One day, the bottom falls out, loss arrives, the plan collapses, the call comes, and the question is no longer whether life is difficult. It always is. The real question is, are you ready? Have you trained? Have you built yourself into someone who can remain upright when the world turns upside down? The Stoic does not leave that answer to chance. He hardens with intention, not with bitterness. This is not about emotional numbness. This is about becoming unshakable. Stoicism does not deny pain. It teaches you how to face it with open eyes. It invites you to engage suffering in small, controlled doses, so that when the real blow lands, your spirit doesn't crack. You've walked in discomfort before. Maybe not this exact path, but one close enough to give you footing. You don't freeze. You don't flee. You anchor. Hardening yourself isn't about shutting down your humanity. It's about unlocking your capacity. It's about doing the difficult now, so you aren't destroyed by the impossible later. So you take cold showers not because it's trendy, but because it breaks your dependence on warmth. You walk when you could drive, not because it's fun, but because it's fuel for grit. You delay gratification, resist urges, say no when yes would offer immediate pleasure, not because you enjoy denying yourself, but because you understand the cost of always saying yes. You train for life's blows, not its applause. Seneca wrote that youth must be toughened against future trials. But this is not just about age. It's about mindset. It's about inner preparedness. Because if you chase comfort endlessly, then when it vanishes, as it eventually will, you suffer twice. Once from the blow itself and again from the realization that you were never ready. But if you've conditioned your muscles to withstand the cold, your mind to settle in silence, and your spirit to carry solitude, then suffering doesn't surprise you. It doesn't define you. It sharpens you. This isn't about becoming stiff or unfeeling. It's about becoming resilient, able to bend, adapt, and hold your shape even as conditions shift. That type of strength isn't found in loud declarations. It's built silently, in the early morning choices, in the final repetition when your muscles scream, in the moment you choose discipline when indulgence is within reach. You harden with clarity, with direction. You're not chasing pain. You're chasing presence, depth, and truth. Because you decided not to coast, not to conform, but to shape yourself day by day into someone who can carry the burdens of life. Not just your own, but those of others too. That shows in how you meet crisis. Not with panic or blame, but with breath, with poise, with calm. Because you rehearse suffering in small rehearsals, you don't collapse in the main act. So again, ask yourself, am I cultivating softness or strength? Am I feeding my comfort or building my capacity? The world will not offer you smooth roads, but the Stoic never expected ease. He doesn't need ease. He's trained for chaos, and that training isn't rooted in masochism. It's rooted in readiness. It's not about loving hardship. It's about becoming unshakable within it. Because the truth is, soft living erodes resolve. Comfort seduces. It flatters with promises of ease, pleasure, and escape. And yes, at first it delivers. The food is rich. The entertainment is endless. The cushions are soft. But there's always a cost. Comfort, when clung to, becomes confinement. The longer you remain in its embrace, the more your edge dulls, the more your spirit forgets how to resist, how to rise. And one day, when the storm comes, as it always does, you'll realize something terrifying. You've forgotten how to fight. That's why the Stoic does not demonize comfort, but he doesn't depend on it either. He resists not from guilt or shame, but from a deep understanding of what's at stake. Because he knows this, luxury can weaken the soul if it becomes a lifestyle. Comfort isn't evil, but overexposure to it is. The Stoic trains not for appearance, but for essence. Not to seem strong, but to be unbreakable when it matters most. Softness doesn't arrive suddenly. It creeps in quietly, almost invisibly, through seemingly harmless choices. Skipping the workout just once. Avoiding the conversation that needs to happen. Choosing ease instead of courage. Numbing yourself with distractions instead of leaning into what demands your growth. These aren't catastrophic decisions on their own, but repeated, they become a pattern, a silent erosion. And over time, that erosion creates a version of you that looks intact from the outside, but within lacks the core strength to face adversity. Society has taught us to equate the good life with the absence of struggle, with more comfort, more convenience, more luxury. But look closer at the lives of those who've swallowed that promise whole. Are they more grounded, more resilient, more alive? Or are they more anxious, more reactive, more brittle in the face of even minor stress? Because when life becomes too easy, so do you, not in the sense of becoming gentle or kind, but in the sense of becoming fragile. And fragility is a condition the Stoic refuses to accept. Fragile things crack. Strong things bend, recalibrate, and endure. And strength, real strength, is only born through friction. Marcus Aurelius ruled an empire, but still trained in denial and discipline. Why? Because he understood that external power means nothing if the internal world is weak and undisciplined. He wrote that the real fear is not death, but the failure to ever truly live. And a life obsessed with softness isn't really life. It's sedation. It's passive existence. It's floating on the surface, never diving into the depths. True living demands tension. It requires discomfort, discipline, deliberate friction. And embracing challenge isn't about rejecting joy. It's about earning it. It's about making room for the hard, delaying gratification, and allowing resistance to carve you into something solid. Because a man who chooses to suffer by choice is the one who does not collapse under suffering by force. Soft living steals more than strength. It eats away at discipline. It whispers that you've done enough, even when you haven't begun. It says take the break. Indulge just this once. Rest when what you need is movement. It dulls your instincts, numbs your ambition, and eventually, it convinces you that you can trade progress for peace without consequence. But there's always a cost. The Stoic doesn't chase motivation. He builds momentum. He aligns his actions with his values, regardless of how he feels. He turns pain into power, effort into clarity. That's why he surrounds himself with systems, rising early when it's cold, fasting when hunger knocks, enduring silence when distraction is tempting. These aren't punishments. They are reinforcements. armor for the inner life. And in a culture that markets ease as the pinnacle of success, choosing resistance becomes a quiet revolution. So ask yourself honestly, have you become too soft? Are you sacrificing your edge for momentary comfort? Because every decision you make is a transaction. Every indulgence has a price. And if you're not vigilant, that price will be your strength. But the power to reverse that is always within reach. One deliberate choice. One honest act. One disciplined step forward. Because comfort might make you feel good now, but only discomfort shapes the kind of human capable of bearing a meaningful life. And then comes a deeper layer. Control. Everyone wants it. Control over time, over emotions, over outcomes. But most never achieve it because they aren't willing to pay the price. Self-mastery. Real control isn't found in manipulating external things. It's forged in the discipline of internal command. And that command doesn't start with willpower. It begins with self-denial, the ability to say no not because you're forced to, but because you've chosen to. Because you understand that freedom doesn't mean having everything you want. It means not needing everything you crave. The Stoic sharpens this edge daily. He refuses a shortcut, resists the indulgence, not out of guilt or shame, but because he knows that every time he denies an unnecessary desire, he takes background. He reclaims himself from the tyranny of impulse. He becomes less reactive and more sovereign. This isn't about austerity for its own sake. It's about creating a mind and body that stays sharp under pressure. Because the mind, just like the muscle, grows soft when unchallenged. If you say yes to every craving now, you will say no to every mission that asks for patience and endurance. But if you choose a difficult thing today, resisting the urge, delaying the reward, sitting with the quiet, you become formidable. You become, as Seneca warned, a man who is no longer a slave to his passions. That slavery rarely looks dramatic. It hides in daily behaviors. The scroll instead of the stretch. The snack instead of the silence. The click instead of the discipline. And over time, these small choices build a life you didn't intend. One of dependence, dullness, and regret. But the Stoic sees this coming. He trains not to look good, but to be free. Free from addiction to comfort. Free from dependence on external validation. Free to stand firm when everything else falls apart.